there, beautiful people. Sorry we were just a minute or two late there. I forgot to let the dogs in, so they were demanding to have a little bit of attention. So excited to see everyone here today. We are talking about a crazy, sensitive, and interesting topic. Sometimes we've thought about it, and sometimes we haven't. So when you hop on, please let me know you're here because I would love to have everyone that is interested in participate and ask questions because this is, it's an ongoing topic, and to some extent we all give advice, which if someone didn't ask for and it's unsolicited can be taken as criticism, even if we meant it in the most loving of ways. And so it's good to at least be conscious of that when you're the one thinking about whether you should give advice or not. I definitely catch myself in that mode and then think, oh, I mean that has stuck with me. Advice that's not asked for is criticism, and sometimes I'll see somebody in a situation that maybe I've been through, and I know that some of the things that I know now actually help make it a lot easier for me, and I want to share that with them, but I have to be aware that if they're not looking for a different way, that and they're not asking for that, they may not they may not feel good about the advice that I gave because it might feel like criticism. So, that goes both for when we give it. Hey, Kimberly, so glad to see you here this week. I was hoping you were coming to join us. And, many times we start getting advice that's not asked for a lot as a child. And it starts feeling like we're not enough, that who we are is not enough, that we're supposed to be something else. We start losing our sense of boundaries early from not just advice but instructions, right? As a child. And then it gets, as we become adults, that advice coming from our parents or people around us. It can be church members, people in your Sunday school class. It can be everywhere where people are just sure that they know what you need to do and how you should go about living your life. And there are many people that are very willing to impart that unasked for advice to you and then even follow up to see if you're following their advice. Christina, Christina's good. Hello, Christina. Didn't mean to jump in without saying, hey, I struggle with this also. As someone who is a problem solver, I want to make things easier for people, but I've tried to keep this in mind because it does come from a place of love, but it's not always received that way. Exactly. Exactly. And we have to remember, as much as we love and want to assist people around us, and really we have that heart for giving to people. I mean, I would be doing what I'm doing if I didn't have that. And yet I have to be really aware that everyone's journey is their own. And I'm here, I've been called to do what I'm doing, which does mean imparting information, useful tools, what can be called absolutely advice to others. I just have to make sure they're asking for it. And then, even if they're asking for it, make sure they know, and make sure myself I'm not wrapped up in how they receive it being making me, okay or not okay. Because that's another boundary is if you come to me and you ask for advice, or I'm working with you in a coaching client situation, my job is to give you what I have as lovingly and to listen and to figure out, what are the best tools I can give you. But it's not my job to ask you, it is to ask you, do you need anything else? Yes. But to follow through and see, to be invested in how you use it or your outcome, because then I'm crossing a boundary. Your journey is yours, and I have to trust that God, the universe, is bringing you all kinds of different ways to get where you're trying to go that you don't always see the path for. And I can be part of that journey, but another human being in any way, shape, or form, whether it's my child, my client, a friend, isn't my responsibility. So when I'm clear about that, I have more to give because I can give it freely without the energy that happens when you start thinking that the other person has to do things a certain way. But we all know there's a lot of people in life, and I've certainly had people in my life that wanted to give energy and information that definitely felt like judgment and criticism. And they weren't, put you in a defensive mode, and yet you really never have the opportunity to defend yourself. But even if you do, those same people are so sure they're right that your defending yourself doesn't change their opinion, which can be painful because it feels like you need them to see you differently. And finding a way to love yourself for who you are and your choices, and trust that you are exactly who you were meant to be, whether they understand that or not. And that it can be a struggle, and it can be a challenge to figure out, especially if it's somebody you're close to, how to set those boundaries. And it becomes, if it's painful, it's hurtful, so it's hard to find. It's a journey to find your pathway to kindly setting those boundaries, but firmly. And sometimes that means, I love you, I gotta go, goodbye, if it's a phone call. If it's in person, it still may be, you know what, I love you, gotta go, see you later, and out the door. And that can be painful in family situations, and yet that's frequently where it occurs. But when we let it happen in our family relationships, then it starts happening to us from other spaces. We have people that do that to us too. Kimberly says, I'm currently working on a project. Taking advice and making sure that the project still feels aligned with my vision is hard. Well, so I would say you got to make sure the advice aligns with you in order to know if it aligns with your vision, right? So if you're asking for advice, then you still, cool, you reached out and you asked for it. You still have to feel, you're right, have to feel, does that feel good or bad? If it doesn't feel good, it's not aligned, because how you feel inside really tells you a lot about whether it aligns with you or not. Victoria says, how do we begin to recognize we need to set boundaries? I would say part of it, so if you're having a conversation with anyone and what they're saying to you is telling you something about yourself, like they are telling you you need to do something or be something, and it doesn't feel good to you, that tells you they've crossed your boundary. And because it feels yucky to you, it feels like you're criticizing who you are, they've crossed the boundary. And so, in knowing if that's happening, if it happens once and it's very rare, then you're probably okay. It was just an oopsie on their part. And if it happens once and it doesn't happen again with that person, you could probably say something to that person. The more challenging is when you have somebody you're close to that you love and you value that is consistently saying things that feel judgmental and critical, and like they believe that you need to do things differently than you are, and they feel empowered to tell you that they are it, because it doesn't matter how far they've progressed or how wonderful their life is. That's their journey, and they don't get to live your journey no matter how much they love you. And I think, honestly, moms are some of the worst. And I say that being a mom as well, and really working hard on not doing that. But having had that relationship with my mom, and having so many friends, and that are moms, and watching this journey, and how close you get to be to your kids as adults really comes down to how well do you respect their boundaries, and how well do you treat them like an adult, in all honesty. um yes, Victoria, it does come back to self-love, and really realizing that you are beautiful just the way you are, and you can love that person and believe they're beautiful the way they are, and still believe that they don't have the right to determine who you are. And if you can get to that space, it helps a lot to be able to set that boundary. I love you, I gotta go. You don't have to try to justify it, because that's a no-win conversation initially. Down the road, you may find that they start to recognize that if they're criticizing you, you're gone. And then they have the decision. When you do it that way, they have a choice. They can decide they want to have more of you in their life and realize that they're going to have you in their life without criticizing you, or not. You can only do that by setting firm boundaries, and they don't always come with words, because you can argue till you're blue in the face, and as long as you're involved in the conversation, they still have power. Isn't that crazy? It doesn't mean you can't come back. They say, I want to go to lunch. You go to lunch. But you literally have to, if you decide to do that, be prepared to. They start down that criticism lane, put money down for your lunch, even the food's not that, and get up and leave. I love you. I got to go. Because that way you don't do it out of hate or anything. You're just not going to sit and allow that person to treat you that way anymore. You have chosen to believe in you. And that power that you give back to yourself is worth the stress. And it is, I promise you, so much less stressful than trying to argue for it. Because it's crazy. And, then it feels bad. And then you just shut down, and you just have to get up and walk away. And till that person gets it. Christina says, what about if someone is angry, insulted when you don't take their advice? Oh, they will be. Many of them that put you in that position will be. You're not responsible for their anger. You're not responsible for their being insulted. They have chosen to be angry because you are choosing to be your own person. And you can't fix that. And you don't even want to have a conversation about it. In fact, you really do need to not have a conversation about it, because that's when you don't talk to them until, and you do have to get yourself prepared for that. But it's the only way. You can't argue them to a place of believing that you can be okay, because they won't go there. Right, exactly, Kate. You are only responsible for your choices and your feelings. You're never responsible. And the same people that run over your boundaries are the people that do think, you made me angry, now you have to make it right, because they don't honor your boundaries. And the thing is they're not doing it out of meanness. They don't have their own boundaries. They don't know where they stop and you start. The only way you can fix that is by setting your boundary to where the only way they get to talk to you is if they're not giving you advice or yelling at you. That's it. If they're insulted, you don't say, I love you. And that's it. Whether it's a text, I love you, and then you shut off the text conversation, you say, I love you, gotta go, hang up the phone. And it's okay if they're mad, right? Because you're not responsible for that. You have to stay in the space of loving yourself. And you can't argue them to that space, because they won't go there. And that's why you just have to set your boundary really firmly. And, if it ever happens to you, you having been on this side of it are like, oh, now you can say, I'm super sorry. I did overstep my bounds. You're right. I'm glad you said I love you and goodbye. And when you're open to this again, then I'm open for a conversation, right? Because you want to be that same respectful, and you will be able to do it with others then, or you can see on somebody's face and you're like, oh, I didn't, you know what? You're doing a great job. That's a great idea. You can reverse your conversation if you see, ooh, I accidentally gave advice and that person wasn't looking for it, because it's going to happen to you. If you love people and you care about people, it's going to happen. The difference is you actually have enough care about their boundaries to see it on their face and recognize it. The person that you're having the struggle with isn't seeing that. And I promise you, I went through a long period of this with someone I was very close to. And one day when I went, I love you, I got to go, that person went, oh, I didn't mean to be negative. They wanted to continue to have a relationship and a conversation with me. I didn't change them. There is no changing them. I had all the difficult arguments, fights, trying to trust me. And it never went anywhere. But when I was able to say, love you, gotta go, click, and I set myself up in a situation. I did not spend the night at that person's house anymore. Close family member. I stayed in a hotel, made reasons. Why? Because if I went to their house and they were ugly and I was staying in a hotel, gotta go, see ya, time to go, out the door we went. No scene, no creating, because there was, they were married to somebody else I cared about that was going to create a whole brouhaha if I stayed at their house and then tried to get up and leave. And it was obvious that they knew, because if I stayed at their house, there was going to be something said that was hurtful that I wouldn't really be able to do anything out without creating a huge scene and then having somebody else in on the argument. But if I stayed in a hotel, never happened, because that person knew I could just get up, pick up my purse, take my kid, love you, gotta go, great seeing you, bye. So all I'm saying is that that's how you set your boundaries. Yes, Christina, setting yourself up for success is huge. Exactly. Exactly. So some of the harder boundaries when it's a family relationship are around holidays and different things. Sometimes, if it always happens at a holiday, you may need to find someplace else to spend the holiday a time or two, until you can figure out, how do I set this up to where I always have boundaries. You have to be willing to find loving friends and spend the holidays with them. And it's okay if some of the other family members don't get it, because I promise you, they have boundary issues too. They just haven't confronted it. You have to matter, and you do matter, and you are so worthy of getting to be all of who you are, and love yourself right where you are and set those boundaries. And exactly, setting yourself, start to think about how to set yourself up for success. um, Kimberly says, recently I knew that I was going into a hard situation. Yes, you want to get ahead of the game. I mentally had to prepare and use affirmations about how strong I was. Exactly. I made it through. I'm grateful that I prepared mentally. Exactly. Exactly. You do want to do the work ahead of time. Absolutely. Because you already know, usually if you're in this space, there's, it's a particular person that you have that with. And so you want to get yourself ahead of the schedule for that. Christina said, I went through that the past few holidays, actually. It's, well, you want to find a place for it to not be painful, whether that's, if there are people in your family that you are good with, find a way to see them and celebrate a holiday with them separately. If your whole family's on one side and you're on the other, then find people that love you for who you are, and focus on being grateful that God, the universe, has given you the most amazing people to spend the holiday with, and the relief you feel at not being in that stressful situation. For me, I was able to go back and do holidays, but with a much clearer set of boundaries. Um, and when there came a point where those boundaries weren't working, I was able to figure out something else. But the first way I was able to do that was actually spending holidays with um, people that I didn't have to feel that way, that I could just go and have so much joy for the day, and I wasn't stressed, and I knew somebody wasn't going to be yelling at me, and it was so worth it. And then I was able to go, and then I eventually had holidays in a different space. We like met for holidays at a restaurant, because that worked better. And then we didn't do it on the actual holiday. We did it separately, which we could get more of the kids together. Well, in doing that, it allowed me to spend holidays in a place that was a very safe, loving space, um, with friends that are like family. And it's kind of interesting too, because when you're in somebody else's family, you can see some of those dynamics going on, but you're not responsible for them, which is a really beautiful thing, because you can just love all of them where they are, and you're not in charge of what any of them choose to do about it. And it's really nice when you can have your boundaries clear enough to see that so much easier. Um, oh, yay, Victoria! I'm excited. That you are enjoying this conversation. It's funny, because we often think that we can talk our way to setting a boundary, and I have found that it's action and lack of words, really, other than I love you. You try to say words that are kind, because you're not trying to poke the bear and start a fight, because it's a no-win situation. You're trying to say I love you, but I'm not going to stay here for this. And that's why it's I love you, got to go, bye. Love you in a house, got to go, bye. Put down your at a lunch, put down the money for the lunch, got to go, bye, love you, because you can't argue your way out. And it's, if that did happen to you at a lunch, it's going to be pretty clear pretty quickly. And then you would wait a while before you would be risk wanting to spend money for lunch that you might not get to eat the food, right? You want to see if going in a better direction, if there is respect for your boundaries. Sometimes with people like that, there is some amount of it that you are going to have to do and really always set yourself up for success. I found in that situation, if I let my guard down and I thought something had really changed, I always got reminded that no, it was changed because I had clear boundaries. And that's the only reason. And it wasn't that they didn't love me, it's just that that's how they functioned. They functioned, you know, giving advice that wasn't asked for and criticizing. And I just got to a point where I thought if I accept it from them, then I end up accepting it from other people. And I don't live the healthy, vibrant life with boundaries that I want to choose to live. And I found that to be absolutely true. I had better friends, better friend relationships when I finally learned to set those boundaries. I mean, my whole life changed in the most beautiful way when I was able to set those boundaries. And I know that each and every one of you is worthy of that. I am happy to continue this conversation at any point in time with any one of you. I hope that you got some tools, some pointers, some things that you can use to set your own boundaries and love yourself, because each and every one of you is beautiful and so worthy of complete, unconditional, non judgmental love. And it starts with letting it in for yourself and knowing that you are worthy of it, because then it gets easier to set the boundaries. It's kind of two ways. You're setting the boundaries to give you the opportunity, and then you're loving yourself, and then it's like a cycle. And it does get easier. I promise it gets easier. It gets easier because when you set it with the hard people that are right around you, you'll start to have more people who respect your boundaries that are naturally drawn to you. And those relationships highlight what it feels like to have other people respect your boundaries and you respect their boundaries. And that continues to make it easier. So I love you guys so much. I can't wait to see what all we come up with and what we get to do next week. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. And I'm always here for conversations at any point in time. Have a great, great day.